Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Regeneration and Economic Growth meeting. I'm just going to start off by reading this. This is a meeting of the council held in public. It is not a public meeting. There is no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the exit nearest to the large screen at the front of the room and proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. We are recording the meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the council's website following the meeting. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. I would also like to remind members that we should remain respectful tonight, and if we can keep our conversations, associated with what we will be discussing on the agenda tonight. Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence? Okay. Moving on to item 2, do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that the minutes of the Regeneration and Economic Development Scrutiny meeting held on the 3rd of December 2025, we've all gone through it and we are happy with the contents. Yes? Can I see a show of hands if everyone is in agreement, please? Thank you. Okay, now that's done, we're going to move on to item number 4, the new local plan regulation 18, part 3, statement of the consultation. Thank you.
I just want to do a quick introduction, and then we have the opportunity for you to ask myself and the officers here tonight questions. I'm sure you've got many. So item 4 concerns the statement of consultation arising from Reg 18 Part 3. As you know, we've had Part 1 and Part 2 before that, so in total we've had around 21 weeks of consultation. This is a pivotal stage of the plan making process, as you know, and it's one that directly affects the council ability to progress and move on to Reg 19. So it's really important that we've been able to bring it here tonight for you to scrutinise and to see how we have looked at that consultation period and how we have then responded to those consultations ready for our next stage. It represents the most technically detailed consultation we've had so far. It introduced new and revised draft policies, and as you can see, some of those policies had been revised following the consultation of 18.2 and 18.1, and some of the responses that we've had from our partners. It looks at everything from the new MPPF from December 2024 that obviously we didn't have before that in the other two, the introduction of grey belt, and the strengthening requirements around deliverability and infrastructure. The consultation also ran alongside Basildon Town Centre's master plan, reinforcing the strategic relationship between growth and regeneration that is vital for this borough. In terms of evidence and engagement, the response was both extensive and robust, and I hope you can see that from the report before you tonight. The consultation generated 1,793 individual contributions from around 993 respondents, with over 8,000 visits to the online consultation platform where information could be seen. Across, we also had 186 representations submitted by email or post that have also been considered as part of the report tonight. So across all stages of the local plan consultation, we had over 10,000 representations, providing a substantial and defensible consultation record. I think the engagement was really proactive borough-wide, and it ranged from direct letters, personal, we had face-to-face consultation evenings that residents could come along to and engage with, and our partners could. We had things that could be seen online, we had paper copies, we had events in the town centres, and we really went out to try and have as many face-to-face engagements as possible with residents in order that that could then be captured and form part of this consultation as well. We also, for this last consultation, worked with the chairs of each of the area committees to ask them when, within the period that we needed the consultation to take place, where would they want those consultation evenings to be. And so therefore we felt that we had member buy-in to when they were taking place and what that looked like. This was delivered in full accordance with the Council statement of community involvement, and accessibility support was embedded throughout. Critically at this stage, secured detailed responses from our 27 statutory consultees. I'm not going to list them all, but you'll see in the report that their responses are technically focused and consistent in their emphasis on capacity, transport impact, everything from where water floods to health provision, climate, all of those things form part of those 27 responses, and they're visible within the report. Officers are already processing the additional evidence that's being generated from those consultations, including transport modelling, the infrastructure delivery plan, open space work and statements of common ground, which are essential if we're going to reduce the risk of being challenged at examination, which ultimately we need to ensure that we have that sound and robust plan. From the wider consultation, the main issues raised are within the report and are evidence driven, and you can review those, and hopefully you've had the chance to do that, and tonight we'll be questioning how we're going to respond to those. The purpose of this report is therefore not descriptive. It enables members to scrutinise what's come in so far and what actions have arisen from that consultation period, and test whether or not the response that we have and future plan moving forward towards Reg 19 is proportionate, is justified by evidence, and that addresses those issues that were raised. So the statement of consultation will be relied upon by the planning inspector, as you all know. It must be clearly demonstrated that this council has listened, understood the risks and responded appropriately, particularly in relation to our consultation with our 27 partners. Members' role this evening is therefore quite a strategic one, in terms of that you need to be able to genuinely challenge the actions that were taken, and to make sure that by doing that we can then strengthen that plan, reduce the risk of intervention, reduce the risk of delay. As we know, this council's already been under intervention because of previous delays. The place of this council, it's important that we're in the strongest possible position ahead of submission. So as we move towards Reg 19, tonight is a crucial part of that procedure, and I welcome your scrutiny this evening. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you said that with a straight face. It's what I'm challenging you. I mean, this is an absolute sham, and you are an absolute disgrace. All of you. Yeah, you've corrupted the process. The due processes haven't been observed. We've basically, I don't know how many houses, I've lost count of the number of houses we've approved in the Greenbelt. No sight of a local plan. No prospect of a local plan. So how can you say that you can take all of this in consultation and make meaning of it? It's an absolute farce. Complete farce. And no, I'm speaking, please, through the chair, if you're going to say anything. So when you say it like all of what you've just said, it amounts to nothing more than a tick box exercise. You're not taking any consultation in due respect, because by the time we get through this process, you will have built all your houses, or not necessarily built, but you will have approved all of your houses in the Greenbelt. Yet we have more than one developer come to us and say, what the hell is going on with Basildon? What the hell is going on? They ask for infrastructure and to give you infrastructure, and you tell them, no, we don't want any infrastructure. We only want housing. So no schools, no roads, no doctors, nothing. Only housing. That's what we're getting back. I'm taking it up with the MP because it's an absolute disgrace. So you sit there and you quite almost perfunctory give this chapter and verse story about we've gone out to consultation, 10,000 this, we've done these reviews, these events, but it's meaningless. It's absolutely meaningless.
Councillor,
Yeah.
I'd just like to remind you that I understand you have very strong opinions about everything that's happened and the whole consultation, but tonight is a scrutiny, so
Yeah, I'm coming
we
to it.
need to actually
Thanks.
scrutinise
I'm coming
what
to it.
she has put
Yeah.
together, and the whole essence of
I'm
it
coming
is to
to.
ask
I'm
questions.
coming to it. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
coming to it.
Chair, on the point that Councillor
I
Turner
haven't
has just
finished yet.
raised,
You may want to wait.
on the point that Councillor Turner's made, I would like to make a statement which I got back to Councillor Barnes on this very point, and I sent him a statement on this point with regards to developers making accusations, and I would like to just to clarify that one point, because this is making the planning system is not corrupt, and the planning system deals with infrastructure correctly, and I just want to correct that one point.
Okay,
Absolutely
Councillor,
Can we turn
one
up his
second.
microphone so the camera comes to Christine, please?
So
No, I haven't finished yet.
I'm going to give you a minute to ask the question you
Thank
want to
you, but
ask.
I might
If,
take longer than a
however,
minute.
if you
I
don't
might
ask a
take longer than a
question,
minute.
Councillor
I might
Turner,
take longer
if you
than a
don't
minute.
ask a question, unfortunately, I'll have to move on. Thank you.
No, Chair. This is a scrutiny committee, and we've been shut.
Scrutinising,
Oh,
you're just
I
giving
am.
your opinions.
I
and
am. No, I'm
we're,
not giving an
we're well
opinion.
along. We're well along
I'm not
the
giving
way,
an opinion.
and we need
I'm
to
telling you
scrutinise.
how it looks. How it looks from the public's point of view.
But
That's
you're
what
not
I'm-
asking a question.
It doesn't matter. I'm giving you a position so that I can come to that. And we've got laughing over there from the Labour members. Laughing over there from the Labour members who know they've absolutely... If you can turn that off, I can speak. We've got laughing over there from the Labour members, the Cabinet member, Adele Brown, who absolutely knows that this process is corrupt.
Okay,
When
Councillor
you-
Turner, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. You're not asking a question.
I'm coming to it.
Can I just go straight to
We-
Christine Lowndes, and then I
coming
can
to
always
it.
come
I'm
back?
coming
Can
to
I
it.
please, Chair, can I say something? We cannot have councillors sitting here with no evidence of corruption, accusing officers and cabinet members of conducting a corrupt process. I am not willing and allow members of this council to sit there and accuse my officers of corruption. It's absolutely ridiculous.
We'll bring the
Can you
developers
turn off
in.
your mic, please? Thank
We'll
you.
bring the developers in and they can tell you. That-
Councillor,
No,
can you turn off your
Chairman,
mic, please?
I had the floor. You've
But
cut.
I'm asking,
don't
as
stifle
the
debate.
chairman, can you turn
No,
off your mic,
Chairman,
please?
don't stifle debate.
Can you, it's not a
we're supposed
debate.
to be-
I'm
it is a
asking you
debate.
respectfully. Can you turn off your mic, please? You said Councillor Adele has to come through the chair. You also have to do the same. So I'm not going to repeat myself. Not yet. Thank you. Because Christine Lyons was about to say something. Until she's finished, I will come back. I'm not silencing you out of disrespect. The point is, you're not getting to the point.
It doesn't matter. I've got the
Thank you,
floor.
Councillor.
I'm responding to a matter which Councillor Barnes raised in a social media post which was on and around the 13th of December of last year. And my email to Councillor Barnes, which was copied to both Gary Jones and the monitoring officer, said the following. I note your recent post on social media where you stated, quote, developers have suggested to me that offers of additional infrastructure such as schools have been rejected by officials at Basildon Council. I responded to him and I said, I appreciate your interest in this matter. However, it is important to clarify how infrastructure provisions are managed under the law. It may be more constructive to discuss with me directly before posting it, as the position outlined is not accurate and risks bringing the council into disrepute. The starting point for infrastructure requirements is the Community Infrastructure Levy Regulations 2010. Basildon Council must comply with Regulation 122(2) when considering planning obligation. And I quote then the planning obligation. The planning obligation may only constitute a reason for granting planning permission for the development if the obligation is A, necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, B, directly related to the development, and C, fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. This means any infrastructure sought by the council must be fully evidenced and meet these statutory tests. the Council will always seek obligations that are compliant with these regulations. There have been instances where certain providers have requested contributions that do not meet these legal requirements. In such cases, it would be unlawful for the Council to pursue those contributions on their behalf. I hope this clarifies the position. Please feel free to contact me directly to discuss this further. And I sent that to Councillor Barnes because that is the position. And developers cannot buy planning consents by requiring development, by seeking development infrastructure for those developments that is not required. We cannot seek that. And that is our position. And we work with developers on all matters and well-evidenced infrastructure to make sure it meets those requirements. So that is the position that's come from this, and that comes from a post in December last year.
Thank you, Officer. Now, I just want to reiterate... No. Excuse me, don't disrespect me. I'm the chair. I am the chair. I'm the chair, okay? Now, I'm just going to reiterate that in this chamber, we're respectful, okay? We're not talking about how we personally feel about the consultation. It's already been carried out. Now, I want to make sure that going forward, it's questions that are scrutinized questions. I have been listening to you, and you're not getting to the point. You're gailing sort of like insults and talking down on councillors. Yes, but you're saying she's a disgrace. That's an insult. It doesn't matter. I don't want such language here tonight. It's not. You're not scrutinising that. You're scrutinising Councillor Adele and her team, including the officers, which is disrespectful, and I don't want that tonight. And if you can't adhere to my rules, then I'm just going to ask that you don't speak tonight.
Shut me up if you really want to start.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions, please?
I do.
Does anyone else have any other questions? If you're going to ask a question, can it be a question? Thank you.
This is a disgrace. The process is a disgrace. So let me ask you a question. How do you square the fact that you put all of this development, you rubber stamped all of this development in the Greenbelt, and the water systems can't handle it? How do you define that as being good planning process? Over to you.
Councillor Turner, so in terms of the water systems, we've obviously had correspondence with Anglian Water over quite a period of time now with regards to water recycling centres. There is nothing wrong with the water recycling centre in Billericay, and there is nothing wrong with the water recycling centre in Basildon. The water recycling centre in Wickford is under consideration by Anglian Water, because what has happened with the water recycling centre in Wickford is the fact that Anglian Water and the relevant overseeing body, Ofwat, were of the opinion that Wickford was not going to grow because we've had no local plan in place for a period of time, and the aspirations then and the funding they were trying to seek to improve the water recycling centre in Wickford was not forthcoming. So as a local authority, we stepped in very quickly and arranged conversations with Anglian Water to look at how we could deal with that. And we are dealing with it. So applications that are coming forward in Wickford have to do one of two things. They either have to be given access to Anglian Water and the water recycling centre, or if you look at currently consented applications, they have to provide on-site water recycling. And that is additional cost of probably, with most developments, about 350, about £5 million. So it's not the fact that the water recycling centres are broken. Because we have not grown, there's been no requirement to increase that. However, there is exceptional capacity at Basildon Water Recycling Centre and at Billericay. So therefore, it's not stopping growth, and we are not blaringly granting planning permissions. Every planning application that has been approved by this council to date has complied with all the infrastructure requirements across all the statutory consultees. It has required exceptional levels of infrastructure set out in our actually not adopted IDP from the previous local plan that our officers work tirelessly to seek for this council. Every planning appeal we had to fight for that 3-year period, the inspectors were surprised at the amount of infrastructure we were securing. And the word surprised was used on a number of occasions. I find it very defamatory of my officers when you make statements like that, which you cannot indicate and you cannot show where we've made a flow.
Don't level that one at me. Thank you. So let me ask you a direct question. I would like to go back on this.
Ask me.
Can I go back on it? There you go. Thank you. So let me ask you this directly. On the record, you're telling me that our water system in Billericay can cope with giving water to these developments and taking it away.
So we have to do a water.
You just said.
Let me.
Sorry, you've just said that there's no problem in Billericay, problem in.
Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong. Yeah, but in Wickford they've got a problem. So answer me directly. In Billericay, is there a problem?
I was going to explain to you how that situation's worked out. There is a water report done that shows how much water can get into Billericay and all our borough, and that's been accepted, and we've got that. We have to check all utilities, and that is the electric, the gas, and water. And in terms of the current requirements in Billericay, the water recycling centre meets that we have not got any objection from Anglian Water. So therefore, there is not a problem with that at the moment. And it will meet the needs of the growth set out in our emerging local plan.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're saying that everything that's going on in Billericay up to now and beyond, so as you said, the growth that is yet to come can be handled by the water company. A simple yes or no?
Yes. The discussions we've had with Anglian Water have said they can meet that. I'm not, like most things, I'm not a specialist. We have to rely on the evidence as given us as the statutory consultees, and that's what they've told us, is that there's adequate capacity within the Billericay Water Recycling Centre to cover the growth assessments within Billericay. What you have to be careful of is that where the water all goes to is not all to the same water recycling centres. So if you live in Bowers Gifford, your water recycling goes north up to Wickford. If you live in parts of Wickford, your water recycling comes down into Basildon. So it's not a case of saying that all growth goes to the same water recycling centres. In Billericay, we've had no response from the water recycling, from Anglian Water, about the capacity of that centre to deal with the growth we are dealing with.
1 second. I'd just like to reiterate that this is Basildon, Wickford and Billericay. So when they're carrying out this consultation, I'd like to believe that it's for all of them and not just Basildon and Wickford. And for some reason you keep thinking that Billericay is excluded or they should have something preferential. I just wanted to let you know that our officers are working hard and they have worked hard to make sure that this consultation is carried out to the best of its ability. It's not the first time it's coming to scrutiny. But every time you bring up Billericay, it's almost like you're questioning their effort, questioning the work that they've put in.
Okay, I represent all of Basildon. I'm elected in Billericay. The reason I bring up Billericay is because that's my experience. It's not because I deem them to have preferential treatment, but the feedback I'm getting is contrary to what you're saying. And when I ask you for a simple yes or no question, you then point out these deflecting factors that it could be here or it could be there.
Councillor.
Hold on, I haven't finished. The simple fact is this, that you are asking developers to get their plans in, to get them approved. And developers are saying there's no infrastructure. The conversations they're having with the water company, you laugh, but the conversations that the developers are having with the water companies, they can't manage the water going in or out.
Can I ask a question before you continue?
And not only that, it doesn't just affect the developments that are yet to come, the growth as you call it, it affects the settled community.
Councillor.
So there's something wrong here, and this is why I'm scrutinising this part of the plan. Yeah, you can huff and you can puff, but this is what we're getting back, and these are the facts.
Councillor.
They're not the facts.
Wait, I need to clarify something. I need to clarify something, please. You said you've been told. You said that this is the information that you have been told that you are getting. Who is this person? Where are you getting the information from? Do you have evidence? Because this is professionally being carried out, but you seem to be having a different information. Who is your source? Where are you getting your information from?
Directly from the developers. Directly from the developers.
Can I ask the officers, is this allowed?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, can I just explain how the process works? So it's I think it's very difficult if members have direct conversation with developers, because obviously that places the council in an issue of conflict. And officers and members, if members want conversations with developers and it to have a true credence on those conversations, it should be with an officer in situ. The only developments I know that are consented, where we have got we're dealing with planning conditions relating to water recycling, and we've got planning applications that are about to go to planning committee, relate to those in Wickford. And those in Wickford, I'm not going to name the developers because that's not from the developers today. I know where those sites are, and I know what they're doing to resolve those problems. And therefore, there are no problems with water recycling in the borough that are not known to this council and are not being dealt with by this council. I've no idea whom Councillor Turner is talking to, but they're not developers that we're dealing with that have got applications at an advanced stage. So therefore, I would suggest that if Councillor Turner wants to put those developers directly in contact with me, I will happily talk to those developers, and that will be more useful of their time to talk to me, who can influence things and make things correct for those future developments, than talk to a council of whoever is across the organisation, because that doesn't bring things forward. And infrastructure deficit is an issue that all local authorities have across the country, and that's why you have a infrastructure delivery plan, which we have got in draft form at the moment, and that will seek to deliver the right amount of infrastructure in the right places, and that will all be costed to make the plan viable, of which Councillor Moore knows about, because Councillor Moore was part of the previous local plan and was aware of the previous IDP and also all plan viability. And that's where we need to get to, is that the plan will not be able to go through to submission if we cannot prove it's got an up-to-date IDP and also all plan viability is there. And that has to meet the requirements of all developments on those sites that are coming forward. The sites that have already come forward are also in the plan as well. So what the IDP looks at, it looks at all plan viability. So those sites that are already in the plan that have got planning permission, we have to add all the infrastructure contributions that we've got for those into the all plan viability, and they still count towards the need of that plan. So if there is any deficit, which there isn't a deficit because we've made sure of that, then the plan itself will have to fund that. So that's how this works. Now, the Wickford issue is a completely different conversation, but that is being dealt with by individual developers and by working with those developers alongside Anglian Water. And there is no issues with water recycling or water in Billericay at the moment. And that is the plan here. That is at the moment. That is the plan that we've got in front of us today.
Thank you very much, officer. So, just going back to you, Ms. Councillor. So, like the officer has suggested, if you do want to bring forward your developer to speak to her, she's more than happy. But I don't particularly want to keep going back and forth on this particular issue. Can I go to a different? I will come back to you, but you're not the only one here.
Why not just deal with me first?
Because you're taking up a lot of time and you're not going straight to the point. Yes, but can I speak to other councillors, please?
For God's sake, it's scrutiny.
It's scrutiny, but you have to allow other people to speak. And last time I checked, I'm the chair. Thank you.
Act like it.
I beg your pardon?
Act like it.
Don't disrespect me. Thank you.
Please, get on with it. For God's sake. You're corrupting the process. You know you are.
Stop. Thank you. Councillor Ball, please. Councillor Ball. Councillor Turner, can you stop?
Yeah, sure.
You're disrupting the flow of our meeting. Can you? Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Councillor Ball, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, after your last comment, you guessed I'd come in. So Wickford recycling has got a problem then. So every site in Wickford has had an on-site water recycling. Have I got that right, or?
So, as I did say, the way that the water recycling centres work across the borough is that they don't work solely on the catchments vary depending where you are in the borough. And if you are in Wickford, some of the catchment actually comes down south and hits Basildon Water Recycling Centre. So actually some of the water recycling from Bowers Gifford, owing to the age of Bowers Gifford, goes actually north up to the water recycling centre at Wickford. So there has been some changes at the moment around how the water is going to be discharged going forward to push some of the water recycling in Bowers Gifford over to the Basildon Water Recycling Centre, because that's got a lot of capacity, and some of that work has already commenced. So that will create a capacity in the Wickford Water Recycling Centre. So therefore, there is some sites at the moment they are looking at an on-site water recycling, but there is no reason in law why those developers cannot connect to the Anglian water system. There's no reason in law they can't do that. But what we want to ensure is the fact that the water, it's under the Water Act. It's nothing to do with the local planning authority or the council itself. It's under the Water Act. What we are looking at is how to make sure that we ensure that we get water recycling centres are not put at any undue pressure. So at the moment, we've got some developments in Wickford are actually being in East Wickford are being pushed on a new system going back down into Basildon Water Recycling Centre, and there is one scheme on that's coming forward, and they've got planning permission already, and they've gone on-site water recycling centre. So it's not as easy as saying everything in Wickford goes to Wickford Recycling Site and everything in Basildon goes to Basildon. It's all because historically how it's all happened. There are pipes all over the place that send sewage all over the place in terms of how our borough works. And so it's not a direct, easy question. I'm very sorry, Councillor Turner, but it's not an easy answer because of the way that the water recycling service is set up. And you have to bear in mind that it's by law they have to allow connection, but what the Anglian Water are doing, they're working with developers to make sure we get the best outcome for our borough in terms of water that leaves that water recycling centre.
So So what you're saying is some areas of Wickford have got problems with the water recycling because it's insufficient.
No. The capacity for Wickford is not a problem. As you grow Wickford, that's when the capacity comes. And if they shift growth, if they shift what comes into the system down into Basildon, they create capacity going forward. So it's basically a case of how you move water around. And that we're not water experts. We've been working alongside Anglian Water now for how long? It's over a year, isn't it? A year?
Yeah.
A year?
Yeah.
We're the only authority in the country that are actively working alongside Anglian Water to work and resolve this. And Anglian Water using us as a really good example of being able to try and get developers to work alongside to deal with these problems. A lot of developers are just connecting straight in, and we've managed to get developers to work alongside and actually to work positively with Anglian Water to create better water recycling for our borough. And that's where we've got to with them. So it's not simple, yes or no, like Councillor Turner thinks it is. Life isn't simple. We've had to do a lot of work and working with Anglian Water on actually how we can repurpose water around the borough.
I don't think it's the second time you've insulted me.
So East Wickford has got a problem. So we're talking the Castledon Road, Belmont Avenue developments. That's kind of East Wickford because north is Barnhall area. So that and we've got a planning vice chair as well. So a lot of them developments along Castledon Road and Belmont Avenue, the London Road side, that's East Wickford in my opinion. So that has been brought up as potential flooding because of the Crouch, and it's just gone through as planning. So there's something wrong there, isn't there?
No, I think you're dealing with something. So this is not the lead local flood authority. This is not fluvial or surface water drainage issues. What this is nothing to do with that. This is to do because that water is dealt with differently. This is to do with the water that hits the sewage works, and so in terms of East Wickford, that is being redirected down to Basildon. A lot of it already is directed down to Basildon wastewater works, and it's just redirecting a valve to allow more to go down that way. So actually, this is not to do with flooding. This is to do with actually, as you flush your toilet or if you use your washing machine, it's that water where that water hits. And basically, so there's a valve somewhere that they're having to reopen, that it allows water to, rather than going that way, the water will come back on itself and drop back down into Basildon Waterworks. And that's what this is about. This is about redirecting wastewater. Well, I spent long enough talking to Anglian Water to understand what's going on.
So that is actually the last water you want to be flooding places, isn't it? Rather than rainwater, that's the last water, because you said as you flush your toilet, well, that is the water you don't want to be flooding. So how do we make sure that this never floods in Wickford? Because you're building a lot of houses in East Wickford, as you call it, the Belmont Avenue, London Road, Castleton Road area. There's quite a lot of development going on there, on what I would term as green belt, but unfortunately the MPPF muddies the waters, if you like, and calls it grey belt. But there's a lot of development going on there, and that's a concern for the residents, the current residents, really.
So Councillor Ball, the flooding that you get in Wickford is two types of flooding. You get fluvial flooding that comes from the river, and that's what you get, and that's what the League Local Flood Authority deal with, and also we get surface water drainage. And they're both types of flooding that they impact actually quite a few parts of the borough. That is dealt with through SUDS, which is the urban drainage systems, and that is also through how we contain water, how we stop water hitting the systems. That is completely different. There is no way that any sewage, if it would get into that water, that's not what this is talking about. They're two separate water systems. Yeah. So there's no way the flooding on those developments has been dealt with through that have come through or currently going through the process. We have to meet the requirements of 1 in 1, 1 in 30, and 1 in 100 years plus 20%. So all those sites have to meet all that criteria, and they have to be dealt with on site. And they also cannot add any water to the current fluvial system that is in excess of the rate that it currently reaches. So no water can flood itself into the Crouch, because it has to be dripped into the Crouch at no faster rate than it currently is at the moment. So it can't make flooding any worse. The example we had, and I can give you a really good example of this, is the Southend Road development in Billericay. So that development has a stream that runs right through that site, and that site we've had to build a substantial SUDS programme at the western end of that development to prevent the water going through, hitting the that system, that little stream that then hits a bigger stream that then goes into the main watercourse. We had to restrict the speed of which the water from that scheme, because it all floods down to one point, would have hit the next stream to increase the volume of water there that would have then gone into the river. So you have to slow the water down. That's why you have those big ponds that hold the water, and they then slowly release it on it's like a valve that lets the water drip out at the speed that doesn't impact the speed that it currently moves at. So that's why sites where you have a development, the surrounding area actually reduces the speed of flooding, because the water is held before it actually hits the watercourse. So that's how it's dealt with. So there's no impact on sewage hitting any of Wickford's water systems. They're two very different systems we're looking at. One is flooding, and whether it's surface drainage or fluvial, and the other one is wastewater, and that is dealt with completely separately.
Thank you. I've actually got a question myself, but it's linked to infrastructure delivery and timing. So, pardon? Oh. So it says a reoccurring theme from consultees and residents is that infrastructure must come before or alongside development, not after. So how does the infrastructure delivery plan ensure that phasing is credible, enforceable and aligned with the site allocations, and what safeguards exist if infrastructure delivery does not progress as anticipated?
The infrastructure. Oh.
Okay. Sorry, Chair. The infrastructure, as Christine's mentioned earlier, in her response about the developers being contacted. The infrastructure has to be. There is a legal process which has gone through for the delivery of infrastructure. It's built upon what's in the infrastructure delivery plan. The delivery plan is a iterative document. It will get more and more detailed, and it builds costs and specific detailed items. They are agreed. The need is agreed for those to be associated with development, and the money that has to be paid. Legal agreements are signed up to and have to be delivered, and the money has to be collected and distributed appropriately, and the infrastructure delivered. So there is quite a which should be quite a tight legal process that's built around it to make sure that it is delivered at the appropriate time. I don't know if you want to add anything more, Christine.
The only thing is that with infrastructure, and the idea of building infrastructure up front is, in some cases, it does happen. And a lot of, I mean, let's take, for instance, the Kennel Lane development. They've implemented very quickly. They had to build up front. It was a requirement of the Highway Authority to do all the alterations to the road system. They had to build that in first because, one, that wouldn't allow the construction, but also any delays in bringing that forward as soon as you get anyone living in there would have impacted the road network. So some infrastructure does come up front. Some infrastructure isn't required. And let's talk about schools. A lot of our developments, and we're getting the requests for education new education sites coming into the IDP from county already, and those requests, they wouldn't build that school straight away. Let's look at Dry Street. Dry Street was 760 homes, consented in 2014. The school has only been open for 2 years, and so it was opened at the point when the school was required by their development, and the development impact on the local schools meant that there was too many children, and they then hit a trigger point where they could then build that school. If they built that school earlier, one, there wouldn't have been, the children would have just been moved around from other schools to there, so it wouldn't have been able to deliver the school site for that local development. And also, a lot of parents tend to like brand new schools. So what happens with a brand new school is you tend to get parents, because you can choose a degree of parental choice now, parents will often choose a new school over an existing school. And what that does, that means that, so the children that were then coming into Dry Street would then have to drive all over Basildon to go to a school, and children would be driving to Dry Street. So they produce that school, a trigger point when they need those places, because there are not adequate places in existing schools within it tends to be three or four wards, and they've done that assessment, and that school comes on board. And that's what happens. So there is no reason why infrastructure first is the point of a local plan, because infrastructure should be when it's required, and that's key, isn't it? And that's what we push on is the key of having infrastructure as required rather than infrastructure first.
I think at this point it's really important to emphasise that as a council we do not decide what infrastructure is needed for what kind of development. That is part of the consultation and collaboration work that we do with our statutory providers, Essex County Council, National Highways, water companies. Those consultations that we have at any planning stage, but particularly when you're putting together a local plan and deciding what infrastructure is needed at what delivery point and what those triggers are, they are determined by that collaborative work with our consultees. So Essex County Council will tell us at what point we need a new primary school. The highways will tell us at what point do we need a new road. The water companies will tell us at what point do you need a new water plant. They are things that they do nationally all the time. They are things that they look at in terms of any type of development, what is needed at what trigger point. And therefore, the way in which that is delivered is time sensitive, but it is responsive to development and the development of that plan at what stage it's at. I think it's important to note that it's not something that as a council we just dream up and imagine. It's something that is done in collaboration with those key consultees.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more questions, Councillor? Oh, Councillor.
It's not something we dream up, but it is something we're responsible for delivering. And that's the big issue. So coming back to water, can I just bottom out, right? Because I think we know what the situation is. Can I just bottom out? Only Wickford, according to the officer, is a problem. Everywhere else is fine. Bowes Gifford is fine. Yeah? Billericay's fine. Billericay's got 8,000 homes or 7,000 homes. Billericay's fine. Bowes Gifford's fine. The rest of Basildon's all okay. It's only Wickford. Is that our understanding?
I'm the Cabinet Member responsible, Councillor Turner, and I'd like to just respond first of all, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you.
Yes.
What I will say to you is what our officers have explained over and over again, and what is explained in the documentation that we had. The document. Councillor Turner, can you at least listen to a response? Thank you, Councillor Turner. Is explained in the documentation from this evening. Our officers have explained that Angular Water have said in their response to us and the growth that we are proposing that we needed to look at how the issues around growth in certain parts of Wickford were going to be handled. They have not raised the same issues with growth across the whole plan in any other areas of our borough. Because as we know, we have Pitsea, we have Langdon, we have Basildon. You know, we are a borough of 5 towns, not just one. And the consultation period that we have had with our statutory consultees, one of which is Angular Water, flagged up that because of the growth that we are looking at now, that they have not planned for that historically because they were not expecting that growth. We have, as Christine has explained, gone through that process with them. They are looking at what is needed for the future. They have a plan for what is needed in the medium to short term, and therefore the plan considers that. As Councillor Turner is asking me for a yes-no right now, Angular Water are saying to us right now, for this plan that we have before them tonight, for the growth that we are looking at across our whole borough, they do not have any objections.
Thank you.
Right, can I come back?
Do you have any more questions?
Yeah. I'm not asking you. I'm asking the officer. What I would like to know, I'm sorry, what I would like to know from a professional officer is, do we have any issues on the water? I can't accept it from a politician. Do we have any issues on the water other than what's been stated, that being Wickford? Everywhere else in the borough is dealt with. The current planning applications have gone through today and the growth that's expected. Are we good with the water everywhere else? That's all I would like to know.
Chair, I've answered this question a number of times now, and as far as I'm concerned, that the statutory consultee is Anglian Water, and Anglian Water have responded on all 3 of our plans to date. And they have made us aware of where there are issues with regards to future ability within the borough, where they have issues with wastewater. And we are actively dealing with that both in our emerging plan and also because we haven't had a local plan for a number of years. Quite rightly, Councillor Turner is saying, in applications that are coming in advance of the plan, and we are dealing with that matter through that process.
Could I? So, okay, thank you for that. On the transport, where is the infrastructure for transport coming? And now I accept that you can't put the developer won't come along and build you a road. It'll have to be triggered. But at the moment, the idea of infrastructure first is we understand all this. And this is why it is a corruption of process. Because what you've done is you put the cart before the horse. You've let all of these applications get rubber stamped and approved, yet we don't have a plan in place for the infrastructure. Tell me, where are the roads coming in Billericay, for example? Where are the roads down in Bowes Gifford? How are we going to make it possible for people to navigate their way across the borough, let alone everywhere else? Billericay had a road going in, I understood, in Ty Common. That's no longer possible. So we've got 7,000 homes. It'll probably end up as 8. 7,000 homes going in Billericay. You can't mitigate the infrastructure for transport. So how are we dealing with that? Shouldn't that come before all of the applications that we've rubber stamped in the Greenbelt?
So, Councillor Turner, as I've explained to Councillor a number of times so far is the fact that we have not rubber stamped anything. We had a number of applications that, because the plan was withdrawn, placed the council at risk. Those applications were refused at planning committee, and they were then approved at appeal. At all times, those developments were allowed in accordance with the MPPF, and that required those applications to meet the highway requirements set out in the MPPF, which was that the impact of that development cannot cause a critical harm to the highway network. And that's how they were balanced on that, and they were balanced on that by the planning inspector. The applications that have happened since then, we've had the same approach. The new MPPF has allowed us to look at a degree of cumulative impact, and that's been a slight change in the 24 MPPF. It's upped the requirements, and the applications that have been dealt with since then have dealt with that. The county council are the highway authority, we are not the highway authority. We can only act on what the highway authority tells us. Now, if we had an up-to-date local plan, which was withdrawn in 2022, we would be in a position where we would have a borough-wide position in terms of the highway network, which we haven't got. We are working on a process at the moment where our highway work is now we've got the whole growth agenda set out in the now plan out at the stage it's in now. We've been working with Arup, who are our transport consultants, for now a period of, is it 6 months? They've been involved. Yeah. What they've done is what they produce in the first place, they produce what's called an as-is model. So they model the borough at the moment, and they look at all the traffic in the borough over all the current developments and anything that's consented. So they add in some of the consents, and they look at the as-is model. So that's what's called an as-is model. And then what they do is they build in the remaining part of the plan. So they add in all the sites that have come forward, and with all that information, they then work out where the aggregative amount of traffic will cause problems on the local network. So local junctions, and then it goes wider. It then looks at the slightly larger roads. It looks at the B-class and A-class roads. It goes wider than that, and it then looks at the A127. It looks at the A13, and it goes even wider than that. It looks at the M25. So actually, it's a pulse out, and it looks at where the pinch points of that growth affect both the really localised to almost like sub-regional requirements. And it then looks at where that impacts, and then the plan itself has to deal with a degree of that growth, because some of that growth is in responsibility of the highway authority, and obviously then you look at national highways, but some of that growth is responsibility of the developers. So we're just getting a draft position of that. Once we get a draft position, that will then go to the highway authority, and we'll say that's the position we've got to, and that's when we start, and at the moment, it's not looking much different to where we got to with our last plan, and so we vaguely know where the pinch points are in terms of that. So at the moment there's no showstoppers for the council in terms of our current growth levels, because the requirements of LPT4, which is the local transport plan for which the county are putting together, the hierarchy of the transport system is changing. So the hierarchy used to put the car at the top and the walker at the bottom, the bike at the bottom. They're sort of turned that on its head, and now the hierarchy is sustainable transport first, the car comes underneath that. So any response you're going to get from county at the moment, and that'll be ourselves, the highway authority, because the hierarchy is changing and the car is no longer the controlling factor in any transport responses we're going to get from either transport consultants or the highway authority. And I'm afraid that's how it is. And I know that the residents in Billericay, and we've heard that from the comments we've had at both planning appeals and also from the correspondence we've had dealing with Billericay residents, and also at the sessions we had in person with Billericay residents. That is not their position, but I'm afraid that is the position of the highway authority, and that's the position that the MPPF and the direction of travel of transport in this country is going, is the fact that the car is no longer the priority in terms of how we set our plans going forward.
Based on what you've just said, which I perfectly understand, so at what phase would you say that we're at in terms of, when you were talking about the structure and, understanding, the pinch points and then going to highways, at what phase are we at if we, in preparation for
we're at the stage where we have to have it all ready for the IDP, so it's in a position, Has it gone to county yet? It's not good to county.
We're negotiating.
The negotiations.
So we're negotiating.
County.
So it is all advanced already. So we are at the very, we have to be, because we're looking at submission quite soon. So we have to have it all in place, agreed by the Highway Authority, put in the IDP and costed, so we know what value this plan has got in terms of what this plan has to deliver in terms of its value. So this will have a cost. It will be, I mean, we know the deficit, the legacy deficit of the borough through lack of investment, through lack of growth, and the future investment caused by the requirements of this plan. If you look at our IDP, it's about 1.1 billion. And that's what comes of not growing, and that's the impact we've had on legacy and now the future growth. And the majority of the requirements for infrastructure are legacy issues, not new infrastructure, and that's what we've got to. So the plan itself should, if we can get all the information into the IDP, which we have to, will fill the gaps that we've had historically over lack of investment through lack of growth.
Thank you, Officer.
So what happens when a developer comes back and says to you, and it's not just Billericay, it's across the borough, what happens when the developers come back and say, we need a new road in Bowes Gifford, or we need a new road in Nevedham Road, yeah, or one down Nicholas Lane, yeah, or London Road in Billericay? What happens? I mean, we can absolutely shut our eyes to this laughable sustainable transport business, but as Basildon Council, we have a responsibility to work this stuff out. Now, normally, will you pay attention? Because I want the officers' attention, not yours. Normally, all of this stuff would have gone before any development. We would have had the local plan. We would have worked it out. We may have even gone back to government and said, we can't support 30,000 homes that you're asking us to take because we just don't have the ability to make this infrastructure work. But we haven't done that. We've opened the trapdoors, rabbit is off and running, and now we're talking about, oh, well, it's okay because we're going to put sustainable transport before the car. So wouldn't you have expected to have all of this wrapped up before you put the local plan together? Or, sorry, during the local plan and before you rubber stamp the Greenbelt applications? Wouldn't that be the normal process?
Councillor Turner, we are not the Highway Authority. We do not set the local transport plan. That's not us, that's the Highway Authority. That's nothing to do with us. Yeah. The hierarchy of the local transport plan is set by the Highway Authority, which is the County Council. So therefore, I've got no control over that. There was a local plan in place. It was submitted to the Secretary of State. It was withdrawn by this council. And therefore, the risk that placed at the council, we made members well aware of the risks when that plan was withdrawn. And that had attached to it an IDP which would have set out how we were going to deal with those matters. The decisions made by members, of which we had to work with, was to withdraw that plan. What happened after that was the fact that we then lost every single application that had been submitted to the council and was recommended and approved by officers, was overturned by members, and then it was allowed on appeal. So there was one that wasn't allowed, which basically we as officers, our recommendation was refusal, and that was upheld on appeal. So relating to where we've got to, where we are now, there's no way that if we had continued refusing planning applications, we would not have won a single appeal. And if you look across the country, and I was at a session on Thursday last week, when the number of authorities there that were saying that they're spending probably £1.5 to £2 million on appeals at the moment, they're in the same position that we were in, when all we were doing is we were just refusing planning applications and allowing them to go to appeal. We were very lucky, and authorities don't understand, we never got appeals against us. Sorry, we never got costs against us, because in fact we worked with developers to make sure that the developments that we got for this borough were correct. We worked with every single developer to make sure that the applications that were approved by in the end the inspector were actually developments that we would be happy to see in our borough. And as I've said to you right at the beginning, is our officers, and I can tell you the officer that worked hardest was Adele Lawrence, who no longer is with us. She worked her socks off to get those contributions for this borough. And if she hadn't done the work, then you would have not been sitting on the amount of contributions which we can talk about at the second report that we got. So therefore, I find it very difficult We are not the Transport Authority. The new plan is advanced. The new plan has got its highway work set out. The new plan will seek the highway improvements. If the Highway Authority requires a new road, that new road is either funded by developer contributions in part or by the Highway Authority if the Highway Authority requires that to be put in place. That's how it's worked. So as far as the council is concerned, we will test, and we've tested to death all the developments we've got to date. We are testing all the infrastructure requirements to make sure they are correct and they meet the tests of infrastructure. And therefore, the plan itself, when it's finally submitted later this year, will be a plan that, as a council, we can say it meets our housing requirements, but more importantly, it meets the requirements of our borough in terms of dealing with legacy infrastructure challenges and future infrastructure challenges. And that's where we need to get to. And it's a 5-year plan. If we don't get a plan in place, then the impact of that is going to be that if you want to throw this plan away today, the impact of that is going to be you will not have a plan in this authority till 2032, because there will not be a new plan put in place, because we'll be going into a new unitary authority, and we cannot start plan making that quickly. So basically, the risks for this council are this plan needs to be adopted. This plan protects this authority for the next 5 years. And you're not going to get 28,000 homes built in the next 5 years. The trajectory sets out how we're going to look at our sites. Once we get our 5-year housing land supply and our buffer, we can then start, as you quite say, refusing planning applications. But until we get to that position, we cannot refuse planning applications unless, like Potash Road, there was a sound reason for us to refuse it. And if you look across, and I constantly horizon gaze looking at decisions, if there's a solid reason to refuse something, we will refuse it. But we have to be very careful, because all that's going to happen is they'll be allowed an appeal and we will lose control of those developments.
Thank you, Councillor. We can allow another councillor to speak. We can come back.
Well, all that's going to happen is this conversation is going to get disjointed. Why are you stopping me? I don't understand it.
I'm not stopping you. I'm just trying to be. I'm not stopping you. I'm just trying to be considerate of other councillors that have been waiting.
You can't finish a conversation like
Okay,
this.
I didn't say you should stop. Go ahead.
So I can speak. So you say all this stuff. You say it all like it's a matter of fact, and that's exactly what it is, a matter of fact. But the question I ask is, wouldn't you have put all of this stuff before you had started building? Because if a developer comes up with a problem now, well, no, you mock it, or, yeah, and you shake your head, but you know this is right. The process has been corrupted. Because what we've got now is the cart before the horse. We are not in control of our own destiny, and the legacy is going to be absolute misery. And you pretty much just said it. You pretty much just said the the authority is all county, so you can just kick the authority. It's all their problem, but that isn't our position. Our position is to get a local plan for Basildon, and in doing that, we have to scrutinise what our people like county are giving us, and you know where the pinch points are. You know where it's coming. And with respect to Potash Road, that's where the planning office threw their weight behind defending it. If they'd done the same with Dunton Road, we probably would have defended that as well. But we're not. We're just giving up. We're giving up on everything Greenbelt. And because it sounds to me like it's a political directive. And that's what our planning officers are working to. Tonight I've heard there's no infrastructure really for water. There's no infrastructure for schools. There's no infrastructure for housing. Yet we know, because we are sensible grown adults, that that's not the case. We know that can't be the case. We know that having 30,000 homes is going to require all of that. And the fact is that you talk about the IDP for the plan that was kicked out, that was on 15,000 homes, for God's sake. This is on 30,000. And no, it's not going to be built immediately. You're not going to have 30,000 homes spring up overnight. But that is the trajectory. And when those houses get built, even in the next 5 years, we're going to create chaos because we don't have this stuff planned and in place. And we will have had all of this application in the Greenbelt that says, go ahead and build it, and we'll catch up with it later. And that's basically what we're talking about.
Thank you, Councillor. Christy.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So we've come today to scrutinise the local plan with the Regulation 18.3. And the policies that you should be scrutinising then, if we were going to scrutinise things properly and we were going to look at how this all works, are policies INF1, set out at page 268 of the local plan, the emerging local plan, and policy INF2. Now, those are the policies that, if you were going to look at the scrutinising of this process properly, would be where you should be putting your energies. And you should be commenting on the reason justifications for those policies and also alternatives. So
Councillor, can you allow her to finish?
So that...
Councillor, can you
it's
allow
very
her...
condescending to be lectured by an officer.
But we're not being...
It happens on too many occasions.
Councillor, we're not being lectured by an officer. She's basically stating the fact that was stated at the beginning of this meeting to keep the conversation. I'm talking, and if you don't stop cutting in, I will ask that you stop talking. Then fine.
Do it.
Can we have a vote that?
Don't like the questioning.
It's not about that. You're being very disrespectful, and I don't like it. You're disrespecting the officers. You're disrespecting the councillors, and you're disrespecting the officers. I am not disrespecting you. I don't like that language. I don't like the language that you're using in this chamber, Mr. Turner. And I will appreciate if you cannot have any more input until this meeting is finished, so that we can progress with this. You're being disrespectful, and you're breaking the rules. So can we have a vote? Okay, do I have a seconder for this, please? To stop. Okay.
If we get on with the meeting, then I'll put my hand up.
So
Yeah.
what is
For you to not speak anymore.
What's the procedural rule?
Well, it says it right here. Just give me a minute. So this is based on 20B, which is the disorderly conduct by a member. 20B states that a member not to be heard further. If a member persistently disregards the ruling of the chairman, which you are doing, by behaving improperly or offensively or deliberately obstruct business, the chairman may move that the member not be heard further. If seconded, the motion will be voted on without discussion. Now, if you want this to go through...
Go on, put it through.
Okay. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Oh, they can't vote. Okay. All those against? So, obviously can't vote.
Sorry? Could you say how much the vote was so we can get it televised? You lost that vote, did you?
Can we move on?
Yeah.
Councillor Moore, please. You had a question earlier.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. On page 14, we talk about the draft infrastructure delivery plan, and we've had some discussion about that tonight. So when do we see the final infrastructure delivery plan at this committee?
the IDP is they're iterative documents, as you may recall, Councillor Moore, from your previous experience working alongside us on the local plan. They're living documents. That document will change as infrastructure requirements change during the plan's lifespan. That will be brought back to committee before it goes off to the Secretary of State and before it goes out for consultation. We haven't got the new municipal calendar, so we don't know when that is. We are expecting, we have a draft of that document at the moment, but we are waiting for some final information with regards to the document itself. We need that to get all plan viability, so that should be finalised by end of the month. End of February.
Yeah, end of February, beginning of March.
And that will then go off, and it will be then placed against the integrated impact assessment and also all plan viability.
Okay. Councillor, did you have any more questions?
Yes. On page 15, we talk about the employment sites for housing and so on. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4. The 8th point, or the 9th point. And then we talk about transport modelling has commenced. So when did it start, and when will it be available for us to scrutinise?
Sorry,
It started in August.
Councillor Moore, we did the as-is model was the first part. I mean, it's been with Arup now. They were commissioned over 6 months ago. So the as-is model is the first part of it. I've already explained this is the first part of modelling that's done, and that is the as-is. That's adding in where we are currently, and that's adding in the growth that's appeared, that's either consented or appeared since the last as-is modelling, because we had to buy that off the county because it was our model, but we had to buy it off them. So that was a model that was done for the previous local as-is plan. We've had to add onto that the current development that's happened since then, and then they are then modelling the new developments. Now, as we're finalising the numbers, which obviously will come out from this consultation, then that will be added in terms of the final numbers for that growth, and that's where we get to at the moment. So it's not in its final version yet because of the fact that we're still some of the sites. If you look at the sites, some of the numbers have changed from the Reg 18 point that they've changed over the past over the life of the plan so far. They've changed. They've gone up or some have gone down. So we need to get the numbers correct to ensure that modelling is done properly. Again, that will come back to committee. A date will, and that will be the final submission doc. It'll be part of the final submission document.
Councillor Moore. Oh.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned INF1 and INF2, which is obviously, I've just looked it up, it's Sustainable Transport and Infrastructure, is INF1, and you stated there's no showstoppers as far as traffic modelling is concerned. Well, I would say that the Netherden Road A127 junction is a showstopper. The other week there was a car broken down under the roundabout of the A127. It totally blocked Wickford up, and this is without the 4,500, 5,000 extra homes. So I would say there are showstoppers, and I just would like your comment on it.
I mean, Councillor Ball, I'm not a highway expert, and that's we're very clear that we're not highway experts. We rely on the Highway Authority and also our consultants to show that. At the moment, they have not come forward with any showstoppers. The point of view, if there's an accident that creates a tailback of traffic, is not a consideration for the growth. If that was the case, then the M25 would be about 20 lanes wide now, because of the number of accidents you have on the M25 that slows traffic down. You would look at growth on that. So those challenges, and also if a junction has traffic at 8 o'clock in the morning, i.e. a few cars that are waiting at a junction, that again is not a junction failure. In the previous plan, we had very few junction failures that were created by that plan, and that is what they look for is junction failures, and that's based on the current count of traffic that hits junctions, and then add to that the additionality of traffic that's created by by that growth, and they get then the junctions. If a junction flashes red, then they have to look at where they can put any changes to the transport network that will stop that junction. Now that might be a set of traffic lights a mile away that will pulse traffic to hit that slower. That might be the change in how the junction works. That might be some additionality to that junction, and that's what happens. So it's not automatically growth stops. It's basically they have to look at where the interactions are required to improve that junction. And we had very few that were created in Basildon itself, and there were very few created in Wickford. Even though we took out eventually the new crossing that would cross the A127, that didn't have any implications on the growth within Wickford that was projected as part of that plan. So it is all. It's not a case of we need a new road here. It's actually they look initially at how they can improve the network itself. A bit of a long answer, sorry.
Yeah, I understand you're not the highways expert, totally understand that. But obviously, in a previous life, I was on the planning committee, as Councillor Brown knows. And then and now, we never get any comment from highways on planning. Never ever. We didn't then in 2014, and we don't now. So, how do we know what are showstoppers and what are not showstoppers? Because that junction cannot cope now, and if we have all this extra development on the Wick area and that which is my ward and various other parts of Wickford, then it's just not going to cope. And I just want to know why there's no. When you said there's no showstoppers, and I've just looked up. You said we're discussing INF1 and INF2, and that is infrastructure, sustainable transport and infrastructure. So I'm just asking the question that I'm concerned about that junction, and it's not just 8 o'clock in the morning.
It's all day.
It's all the time. I use that junction a lot, obviously, and I have to now gauge when I go to Sainsbury's, because we haven't got a supermarket in Wickford, by the way. I have to gauge when I go to Sainsbury's because it's just blocked up the whole time, and it gets worse and worse and worse every year. So there are showstoppers, and that's one of them.
So, Councillor Ball, I wasn't using that junction as saying the way I wasn't saying that junction is busy at 8 o'clock. What I was saying is that if you look at the way they look at the as-is model and they look at where the red parts are. We haven't got the full information back yet, but what we've been told is there's nothing detrimental that will stop the plan. So that's the difference, isn't it? There might be, and I haven't seen that the full detail yet. So so at the moment, all we can say that until we get the full information back, and it's been reviewed by the county council. The county council, as the highway authority, do comment on planning applications. They're statutory consultees. They have to respond. What they don't do is they don't attend planning committee, and they're two different things. And that's where we all say at planning committee that the highway authority have made the following comment, and what we can't do as planning officers is that we can't substantiate that comment. We have to go by the information that's put there by the highway authority. So when the highway authority have no objection to a development under the highway position, this is on a planning application that's in front of the council, we cannot put a reason for refusal around highways because they will not substantiate that reason for refusal, and therefore that is a matter of cost straight away for the council, because we are not the local highway authority and we are not allowed to refuse on highway matters because that's not within our remit. Now, when we're a unitary authority and we are the highway authority, as a new unitary authority, we will be able to refuse on those grounds, subject to having the correct ability and the correct officers in the room to be able to support us with those reasons for refusal.
Correct everything.
Can I come back? Yeah, I understand all that, obviously, about we can't refuse on highway grounds if they don't comment on them. But a lot of the time, on the agenda, it says no comment from highways when there should be a comment from highways. So I'm saying a lot of times there isn't a substantive comment from highways, and there should be. And so that's what I'm saying. They're not playing the game, basically.
Councillor
What I would say, in my experience from being chair of planning, it doesn't say no comment, it says no objection. And the two things are different. The Essex Highways, they are the highway authority, as we all know, and they get to say what does and does it need improvements, does it need changing, does it need mitigation, what is the way forward. And if they have no objections, what they are saying is the present system will support the growth that you're looking at in that area. That is different to no comment. And I think we need to be clear that legally they have to respond to us, and therefore the comments do come forward, but often they are no objections, because as a highway authority, they have no objection.
Yeah, thanks for that. But I know that you used to get annoyed at the Highways Authority as well. So yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is they don't play the game, for want of a better word, in our plan applications. And to put 302 houses recently on the Wick, and then with nothing at the Netherden Junction, we've also got a data centre and a recharging centre going there. It's just going to make things so bad. So when they said there's no showstoppers, I've just quoted you one from personal.
Councillor Turner?
So can I just ask, in your deliberations on these planning applications that you go through, do you ever query a statement on from county, for example, that says they don't have any concerns? Do we ever go back and say, are you sure? Or do we just accept it at face value?
The way the planning process works is the fact that the Highway Authority, as does the Council, requires developers to enter into a planning performance agreement. So developers, before they come to the local planning authority, have normally had an initial engagement with the Highway Authority, because the Highway Authority, as I've just said, can be showstoppers. So if they can't deal with the highway matters, they will not get out of the stable, basically. Then no goers. So in general, with good developers, they will have had an early pre-app as part of a PPA with the Highway Authority. And what we get from that is that we will then get a user developer will come and talk to us in our PPA and present what the Highway Authority have spoken to them about. And we will then work through that with the developer to see whether we can overcome any issues that are there with the Highway Authority. We also meet the Highway Authority on a fortnightly basis, so we have a running meeting with the Highway Authority to look at all current applications that are with the Council to challenge some of the comments that are coming back. So there is a constant ongoing dialogue between developers, the Council and the Highway Authority, and any of that three together. So sometimes, at the moment, I'm dealing with the Highway Authority on a matter on behalf of the developer to try and get an agreement on a matter which we want agreed as part of the planning application. And that's in the Highway Authority's, it's in their favour rather than in the developer's favour. So we work very hard, and that's why there's this misconception about the fact that everything's just rubber stamped. Most applications are with the Council for up to 18 months before they get to planning. So it's not a rubber stamp position. Those applications have been through an awful lot of work to get to the stage they've got to, and they're not rubber stamped. They've been tested, they've been through all the challenges that they have to go through to get to that stage. And I do get very annoyed at the concept of rubber stamping. There is not one application that has been allowed by this Council and is currently with this Council that will get rubber stamped, because that's not what we're about. We charge developers. A developer, before they can talk to this Council, has to pay £100,000, around that, to talk to us. That's where we take the PPA, and that's whether we approve or refuse it. That is to test those schemes. Those schemes, the first thing we see on those schemes, and I'm not interested in what the developer brings forward, the first thing that happens is that we go out, we have a red line site, and we take all our teams out on site to have a look at that site. And at that meeting, there'll be the Highway Authority, there'll be their highway experts, there'll be our ecologists, their ecologists, there'll be our people to look at drainage, their people to look at drainage. We look at everything. Our urban designers, their urban designers, our planners, their planners. We have meetings straight from the start. It's not a rubber stamp position. It is a serious way of dealing with developments. And we are looked on by majority of developers that work with us as top A1 class planning authority. We do better than anybody else in terms of working with all the constraints to create the good developments that are coming to our borough, and the work that goes on in that that very tiny planning authority is now looked on nationally as one of the best. So it's not a rubber stamp position. You might think because those get planning permission, it's all rubber stamped through. The amount of work that goes into those applications, you would not understand what we have to test, and they are tested to the nth of the capacity to get those through. There's nothing that is allowed through this chamber that I would be ashamed in the future of seeing what it looks like, because they work on them so hard. And we were speaking to Steve Reed about what we do the week, and Steve Reed was over impressed at how we operate as a small local authority. So I really think that that we work, and everything that comes forward from those, in terms of all the requirements from developers, as long as it's lawful, we'll seek it.
If I could just we've had this discussion before. I'm not suggesting you don't discharge your responsibilities correctly, but at the end of it, the rubber stamping is development in the Greenbelt will go ahead, and to come hell or high water, and that's the fact. I'm sorry you don't like it, members of the Labour Party, but that is the fact. That's what's coming forward. And the reason I asked, do you have conversations with the authority? We're just giving you one example there. I can give you a dozen examples across the borough where there are pinch points. Now, you've just put an application, 100 and odd houses in the Wick, but you haven't had the discussion on the pinch point, which is Neverton Road roundabout. Now, that's absolutely fundamental to any development that goes on in Billericay. And this is why so you say about hold your head high. The resident out there has a completely different view of planning in Basildon Borough at the moment. Completely different. They see all these applications, they come to the committee or they watch it at the committee, and everything gets rubber stamped. Doesn't matter what it is, where it is, how it is, it's all getting rubber stamped. So you could have done all of your diligent work, and I'm sure you have done, but it doesn't matter because the answer at the end of it is approve. And that's what we're facing with. And the legacy, whether we like it or not, is going to be misery. And we know it's going to be misery because we're having to deal with the issues now. Neverton Roundabout is just one of them. Yet Langdon Road is another one, very close to your heart. No, it's not secret, but when you get traffic lined up there for 3 or 4 hours a day, in the morning and at night, you're not going to like it. We know these pinch points. We should be having the discussion. We should be dragging, in my opinion, the Highways Authority around the table saying, look, are you sure you can deliver this? Are you sure this is going to work? I'm not hearing that. I haven't heard it on water. I haven't heard it on transport. And to me, this is just a rubber-stamped exercise to get 30,000 homes in the borough as quickly as we possibly can. 50% of it is social. All great stuff. We'll have London living in our neighbourhoods. And at the end of it, nobody is going to be happy with it.
Can I just go back on one point? And as I've said time and time again, is the fact that the MPPF, up until December last year, didn't allow us to look at cumulative impact. So we weren't allowed to look at cumulative impact of transport. That was not allowed. So therefore, we couldn't look at the implications of that development on other developments. And actually, they only look at the localised network. If we'd adopted a plan in 2022, then we'd have been able to have that really in place already. And we'd been able to make those assessments. But without a local plan, we can't have that wider conversation. And if you look at the recent Langdon Road application that went through, and if you look at the comments that came back from the Highway Authority, they do make comments about Sun Street. They do make comments about the fact they can't improve Sun Street. They do make comments. The only way they can deal with the impact of transport on Sun Street is to look at advanced levels of sustainable transport, because they cannot, through that planning application, because we haven't got a local plan in place, they cannot require any additional support around Sun Street. So therefore, there was no reason for refusal on highway grounds because it wouldn't have caused a critical damage to the highway network, and therefore, from the Highway Authority's point of view, they had no objection, subject to improvements that were set out in their consultation response. They were quite substantial, but they set them out in that consultation response. So it's not as simple as saying they should do that. That's not acceptable in the planning process. The application has to look within the remit of the local area that planning application is based. Unless we have a local plan in place, unless we have that highway work set in place, and that's the point we're in. At the moment, we haven't got a local plan, and therefore we are dealing with application on a piecemeal basis, and that piecemeal basis, unless we get this approved quickly, is what's causing us the problem. However, the amount of contributions that we're seeking from the Highway Authority, and if you look at and we're looking at skills at the moment, but if we brought the same one back for the Highway Authority contributions, they are significant. Most developments, we're looking at £1 million to £2 million worth of sustainable transport contributions in terms of bus network improvements. We're looking at substantial highway improvements and local highway network, and also we're looking at substantial improvements in cycling and walking routes.
1 second. I just have something to say, just like listening to everything and just putting things into a bit of perspective. From what I'm understanding, based on what Councillor Turner has said earlier, that looking at this whole thing from the residents' perspective, they see it as just a bunch of applications and they don't really understand why a lot of this is going on. But we've carried out consultations and they are happy for this to go ahead. But then if we now look back on issues like the road issues that you've mentioned, how then do we, should we say mitigate those issues in the future? Yes. So I got that. Exactly. You literally just mentioned that. So, but I'm asking on behalf of like the residents that are tuning in and don't really understand the should I say the language or the context of the way we're speaking right now. How do we get them to understand that? Because if these councillors are saying that this is an issue that they keep bringing up to them, then how can we as councillors and officers relay this to our members and residents that are watching us tonight and helping them to understand that it's not like, we're not hearing their complaints. Everything is in the local plan, as you've mentioned.
The way I can give you an example of Chelmsford. So Chelmsford obviously had the massive northern expansion, which has been the NECAP, which is the northeast extension, also Bewley Park. And as part of that, there was a requirement at some point in time to put a new bridge in and a new road. And that came, and that was in the plan. That was in the plan, and that's been the plan for a long time. Now that new road and that new bridge have only just come into play. What happened is the fact that they let Chelmsford get to a critical stage where Parkway was constantly congested, and at the point of which they released the pressure by adding that new road in, let go of that pressure. So they brought that in when the developments when the developments needed it, but actually at the point when the traffic network needed it. Now, because we haven't had a plan in place, the critical points of where we've got to of traffic congestion, the new plan and the new work that ARP are doing will show where that is, and will show us where we need critical new paths to be brought in to stop that. And I've lived in Chelmsford for 36 years, and I can tell you that it got to the stage where Parkway was constantly active, busy, all hours of the night. All hours of the day. It was busy to levels that there was congestion. They released that by adding that road in, and the impact that's had on Chelmsford has been incredible. So you can see how new networks work, and you can see the implications of bringing them at the right time, and how it then slowly releases that. The plan that we had in place in 2022 with its IDP had some changes to the highway network which would improve the traffic flow around the borough. That was never implemented because the plan was withdrawn. This new plan takes some of the legacy requirements, which obviously we haven't delivered so far. That will be delivered as part of this, and also then it will future-proof it going forward for when we need those new changes, and they'll be set out in a trajectory of when we have to have those changes. And that's what will be set out. So you will probably get another pinch point like Chelmsford got, where it ground Chelmsford Town Centre to almost a halt, and then they release that pressure. And I mean, the other classic one is that I do quote quite a lot is the M1. They did a similar thing in the M1. They got it wrong. On the M1 by Milton Keynes, they widened the M1 by Milton Keynes, and they released it too soon. So they widened it and they did it too early. And what happened is the whole idea of motorways, it's supposed to take traffic in a straight line. You're not supposed to be dealing with local traffic. It takes traffic basically up and down the country or across the country. What happened is they released it too soon, and what happened is that all the traffic that had gone off the motorway on the little roads to go like one junction up went back onto the M1, and what happened is that it reached capacity too quickly because people then were using it for the wrong reason. So again, if you bring your infrastructure, your highway infrastructure in too soon, everyone change their patterns too quickly, and it reaches congestion too quickly. That's why I'm not a highway expert, because the highway modelling does actually work, even though we all sit and naysay. It actually does work, and you can see the reasons why they do it. But to the people out there, it is very difficult, and I find it very difficult. We speak to the Highway Authority on a regular basis. The plan itself will be to 2043. We look at a 5-year review, so this plan actually will be live to 2029. At which point we will be joining with the new authority. The new authority will then write a new plan. So our next review will actually be a unitary plan that will set out whichever authorities we're sitting with. We'll create a new local plan. So the local plan itself, it will carry on the legacy, will move into the new unitary plan, but actually the growth itself at the moment is based on a 5-year trajectory, which is why we have to have a 5-year house land supply to get us there, and then we need 10 years to show that we can deliver those 10 years. After the 10 years, the remaining 5 years of a plan are normally slightly more open, because that's when you start looking at your brand new overarching review. So actually what we're interested in is what the change in infrastructure is going to be in the first 5 years, because that's what we have to get right now, but then also with an eye on what's needed for the 10-year process to make sure that when those pinch points start to happen, we can plan for them correctly.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I feel like sometimes if we just simplify it, people just understand it, because when they're looking at it from, the local plan and all the context in there, sometimes, a lot of wording can cause misunderstandings. But the way you've simplified it, I'm sure a lot of the viewers at home would really appreciate that. So thank you. Councillor Turner.
Trust me, the viewers and the residents know exactly what planning is about. They're not as naive as you think. Not one bit naive. And I find it, I'm going to disagree with you here. Chelmsford is a misnomer. The plan for Chelmsford, the bridge and the railway, was put in at the beginning of that development for Bewley, the extension. But coming back, that was Greenfield site. So you would expect. No, I'm talking. I'm talking. You can have a go after I finished. You can have a go after I finished. Thank you. So, but coming back to this borough, yeah, where are you going to put roads that mitigate all the development you're going to put in? And you mentioned the IDP on the plan that was kicked out in 22. It wouldn't have made one bit of difference. Not one bit of difference. And you know that. Even if we had that plan in place, government would have said to this lot, you've got 30,000 homes, you've got to find another 15,000. We still would have had the development going on, the rubber stamp development in Greenbelt. There wouldn't have been any water, there wouldn't have been any transport. It's very disingenuous to sit here and say what has just been said. And the residents know this, they're not stupid. They have to employ a bit of common sense. And we all know what is going on here. We're not getting the plan and just saying, well, this is how we're going to move our borough forward. It's just a case of we're going to build and we're going to build and we're going to build. Build, build, build. That's all it is. And to hell with... No, I haven't finished. And to hell with the other stuff. And I would say to you, you tell me where in that local plan... You've only just started the transport study. You've been working on this under the new administration for 2 years. I would have thought you would have kicked that off right at the start. But you haven't. And that's an indication of what the priorities are. It's not about infrastructure, water or transport. It's about housing. So when we come to have this plan go in front of an inspector, all we're going to say is we don't have any of the infrastructure really laid out until now to go forward. This is a corruption of the process. It's absolutely fundamental to what we should be doing. And as officers and as members, we should be kicking back and saying, this isn't right. We've got developers out there that are screaming for infrastructure. They're screaming for all of the infrastructure that we need, and they're being told, don't worry about it, just build. Just build your homes, not a problem. And we know, Netherden Road, well, Bowes Gifford, yeah, at the junction of the A13, South End Road, coming, and you've mentioned it yourself, Sun Corner, Sun Street. These are rat runs through Billericay, not just for people in Billericay, but people, would you believe, coming off the A13, going over to Chelmsford. So what are we going to end up with 7,000 homes at peak times? Just getting to the station's going to be difficult enough, and we can't even get extra capacity on the trains. And this is fundamental to the plan. And residents are not naive. They know what's going on. They can see what's going on. So to throw in Chelmsford and the M1, that's just like a red herring. We're talking about Basildon Borough, the problems that are affecting us. And in this plan, under scrutiny, it just doesn't work. And that's what we're going to go forward with. 6 months, it sounds like we've been working on the transport study. 6 months. You've been in over 2 years. And that's where we are. We've got no faith in this planning process at all, because it would deliver a whole lot of housing, and we'll end up with the London boroughs all shipping out here. It won't be Basildon Homes for Basildon people. It'll be Basildon Homes for Sadiq Khan. They know it, we know it, and guess what? The resident knows it.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Do we have officers? Do you have anything you would like to say?
On that one point that Councillor Turner raised, the point I was making about Chelmsford wasn't about the fact that the point I made was the fact that the
sorry, Councillor, your mic.
The plans had been in place for all those highway improvements and the railway for probably about 20 years. They had been in place for 20 years. Actually, the railway station 25 years, and they've just come forward now when it was needed and when they could afford to do it. The railway station, the highway work, which was planned in the plan right from the beginning of Bewley Park, came in to requirement when it was required. So it wasn't about the fact that it's only just come forward, and that's why I'm saying about planning. And a local plan is, if you have an update local plan, which Chelmsford always have had an update local plan, they have renewed it every time. They've refreshed their plan when they should refresh their plan. That's when they get good growth and they get good infrastructure that's required for the plan. And that's what we're saying, is the fact that we get a plan adopted, we review it every 5 years, as we should be. Then we can look at if there's a change in housing requirements. If they go up or down, we can deal with that. If there's a change in infrastructure requirements, we can deal with that at the point of the review. The problem we've got at the moment is we haven't got an update local plan. We've got no infrastructure plan that's required. What we're dealing with is the conscientious work of officers and the conversations that we have to have with our statutory consultees about how that's delivered. So that is the difference between ourselves and other local authorities with update local plans, is the fact that we've got no way of controlling what happens in the bigger picture, because we haven't got that plan that sits alongside that. And had we adopted a plan, so our current local plan is from 1998, when there wasn't a requirement to do any of that, we have got a plan that's got nothing of that detail in it. And that is a difference. And that is exactly what Councillor Turner is saying, is the fact that we do need an oversight. But what we can't do is that if we just sat and had the applications piling in and not determined them, which is maybe what we should be doing then, is that all would happen is they would go to appeal. In general, they'd be won on appeal. We'd be wasting a lot of council resources, and we would not be able to then seek the obligations that we managed to get through all those developments that came through the appeal process at the time. And then we wouldn't be dealing with the developments we've got now and creating developments that are going to move forward in this local plan. So, and the developments all sit as part of this. They're all sites that are in this local plan. These are not random sites. We are dealing with sites that are in here at the moment, and that's where we've got to.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm going to stick a spoke in the ointment here. I don't think obviously in previous life I worked on the last local plan, and withdrawing it was a ridiculous position by the previous administration. But it was done, and I agree with the officer that all these are now piecemeal, and we can't look at the overall plan because we haven't got a local plan. Our last plan was 98 with safe policies of 2007. So, and the last plan, although it was, from memory, it was 19, Richard Moore will probably correct me, it was 19,000 properties, and now we're talking 27, 28,000. And that's the issue with not having a local plan in place now. But it would have been reviewed in 5 years, as Christine said, so it would have been up for review probably last year or the year before. So, because it was 2019, that plan, although it was put in so soon, so it probably would have increased anyway. So we probably would have been in this situation anyway. But we would have had maybe some infrastructure in place. So what I'll say is we haven't got a local plan, and we should have had a local plan. And it's sort of, I blame everyone really. I blame the last administration for withdrawing it, which they should never have done. But that was their decision. I wasn't even on the council then. But so there is big issues here. But what I'll say is I'll go back to Netherden Road. The problem with Netherden Road is all the people from the Dengie Peninsula, that's Woodham and Malden and Burnham, they all come and they use the Netherden Road junction and not the Fairglen junction. And Councillor Smith brought this up yesterday at the Cabinet meeting. The Fairglen junction is supposed to have been improved. It hasn't been improved. So that's a highway problem. If that was a better junction, then perhaps you would lose a lot of the traffic for the Netherden junction. Perhaps it would use the Fairglen junction and carry on down. But because that was the traffic modelling at the time, and it just hasn't happened. So, I mean, I know Bewley Park because my son lives there, so I know that new bridge, and I know the station, I know that area really well. But yes, it has only just opened. But Fairglen should have been done, and that's the Highways Authority. So that's just a statement I thought I'd make.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to say and correct Councillor Turner that I was not in any way trying to that residents are naive. No, I was actually asking the officer to simplify this notion that you were talking about, the roundabout, which she did by explaining the process and why it is the way it is. I was not in any way saying that residents don't know what the local plan is. I was not in any way saying that they're naive either. So I'd like you to just correct that. Before you speak, Mr.
I just want to come back on that one point. I wasn't criticising you for it. I was just making a fact.
I know. I'm just talking to residents that I also watched as well because I didn't want them to get the wrong idea. Councillor Moore.
Yeah. Just what impact has the new MPPF got on the local plan?
I mean, I think the draft version that obviously I mean it's still in draft, isn't it? I mean basically I think in terms of Greenbelt it makes I spoke on a panel on last Thursday, and I think it is opening the Greenbelt up even further. And one of the conversations we were having at that panel on Thursday was the fact that actually it is almost asking an undercurrent for everyone to review their Greenbelt position. And I think that's where we've got to, isn't it? And that increasing housing numbers around railway stations, the presumption is when the presumption position's moving more in favour of development. And I think the Greenbelt, in terms of the overarching decision making, will have less of an impact, especially in development areas like ours, where we haven't gone up to local plan, and also we've got a position where we haven't got that 5-year housing land supply. So from that perspective, I think it places us more at risk, Councillor Moore. I mean, we'll have to do, even though our local plans under the previous regulations, not the current regulations, we will still have to test the plan itself against that to make sure that it's got some longevity in it. Because again, we've got a meeting on Friday actually, Councillor Moore, to talk about the national development control requirements as well. So those policies we're going to be more nationally based, and the plans themselves. Then, if you're not compliant with the MPPF, the plans have less weight. So I think therefore the plan making has to be very much in line with the MPPF. Otherwise, your plan's weight is further reduced. So it does make a higher requirement for these plans to be, I think, a lot more elite, a lot more tighter, and also be very clear in what their aspirations are in terms of what they're trying to deliver.
Thank you. Before Councillor Haddon's hand
If
up.
it's relevant to your previous point, then carry on.
He's basically saying if it's linked to what he was saying before, we can just let it flow, basically.
I was just going to ask, do we get a report to this committee on the implications of the new MPPF?
Councillor Moore, we can do you I mean, at the moment it's only a draft, isn't it? So we haven't got the final. I mean, from Thursday, I was in a meeting with one of the KCs that was part of the draft, who drafted the MPPF. He thinks that the new MPPF will be delivered, he reckons, late June. So the new MPPF will be with us in late June. So what we normally do is we do an all member briefing note on which you think you brought that in when you were a portfolio holder. That will go out to all members. There'll be a very short briefing note on it, and then a longer briefing note on the implications on the emerging local plan. I think it will change the way the future plans are written. I think there'll be. We were saying that most plans now are about 600 pages. We said based on the MPPF, they're going to be probably half that size, and the majority of it will go back to allocations, and then look at the implications of the the more standardised national policies on future development. Probably getting more in line with Europe and probably how European models are based, rather than on this sort of approach where because it will go more into spatial planning. I was trying to say, rather than actually looking at district planning.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll wait over an hour and 3/4 to speak, and then Councillor Ball takes one of my points just before I come in. I've said it before, and no doubt I'll say it again. If the Conservative members don't like this local plan, maybe they should have passed the last one. But the points I want to talk about, may be a bit controversial this evening, but talk about the actual report and the actual responses to the consultation. And well done by the way for getting almost 1,800 contributions from 1,000 residents. It's not hard. It's not easy to get such a big group engaged, and it's great that residents are getting involved. But I'm looking at the graphs on page 50 of the report. The age groups one at the bottom is very clear that residents under 45 aren't engaging anywhere near as much as they should be, seeing as they're the ones who will be impacted the most by this by this local plan as it comes forward. So I mean, what can you explain sort of what the council was doing to get those age groups more involved and more interested in getting engaged with the report or with the consultation?
Thank you, Councillor. Over these last 3 consultations, we've actually seen, I think in the previous one, we particularly saw a far bigger increases. Really surprised us in younger people actually responding, because although the response rate appears to be quite low here, it's higher than it sometimes is. So it's quite good to actually get responses from younger people. What we've been doing to try and get the responses, obviously, is engaging with the meetings. We've been trying to understand where people, and this is where the chairs of each area were asked, where would you like a meeting to be, so we could work out where the most appropriate locations would be, so they could reach people. And we've tried different locations, and in this consultation alone, there were 8 different consultation events at different times of day and in different locations to try and meet people where they were. There have been leaflet drops, and there have also been used as well as copies in the library, physical copies, as also using the digital platform run by Commonplace, so that people can access wherever they need to the information. So we try to open it up and get as much responses as possible, and obviously with the thousands of over these three consultations in the last year, having got thousands of responses. We've actually managed to reach quite a few people, but obviously we're always trying to get more. So we'll look at new ideas as well to see new responses from other demographics, because they're incredibly valuable demographics, and we really want those responses.
Councillor Odell?
We did employ a consultant copper to come in and talk to us about how they've worked with other authorities doing consultations and how they've managed to reach different groups. We had drops, so we were giving out cards in our town centres and our railway stations, on prominent, like our high streets and things like that, to all age groups. Simple QR code that could be used on someone's phone in order to access. We used our social media campaigns. We informed schools what we were doing. We went to groups. We got our youth council involved, and so we tried to look at how to reach people, like we said, like where they were. I think the use of the QR code cards that we gave at train stations in our town centres on our high streets was very effective in reaching multiple people that perhaps wouldn't normally have a look at a meeting like this, or perhaps on our website. In terms of what engagement is expected compared to what engagement we've had over the 21 weeks of consultation, that this far exceeded what is a minimum, but far exceeded what is usual in terms of a consultation for a local plan. So I would say, yes, you're right, we do need to still reach some of those people that are traditionally harder to reach or harder to engage in their views, but their views were captured in other ways as well, in the in-person meetings that we had. And in the town centres that we also did those meetings.
Thank you. Yeah, and then thanks for that. That was helpful. And then also the other graph on page 50 about how people travel around the borough. Firstly, I would love to meet the 0.4% of people who travel around Basildon by tube, but the Was any data taken on sort of where in the borough these respondents were based? Because I would imagine, for example, the majority of people in Billericay were saying that they travel by car, whereas if you live in sort of central Basildon, you're probably less likely to travel by car and more likely to travel by walking or train or something like that. So and will that be sort of taken into account? Because obviously, but just looking at this graph as it is in the raw data, you would think sort of a large proportion of people in the borough travel by car, and so we need to make sure that the car is the primary way that people travel. But it may not be the case in Councillor Turner. I've been very patient this evening listening to you. Can you please give me 5 minutes and listen to me? Well, while my light's on. I'm the one talking, and so yeah, is that taken into account of sort of where people live and how they travel in their specific part of the borough?
Yes, to answer that question, as part of consent process, a consultation response, we have to either receive their postal address or their email address. So that is information that we do have, their postal address. So we can provide that as an action to correlate the graphs together to show the relationship between postal address of respondees to, for example, how they travel across the borough.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I hope that is taken into account. And then my last point on the sort of data itself is notice there's no sort of graphs or anything based on sort of the housing type of people that are responding. So, for example, if they own their own home or if they private rent or anything like that, is that sort of taken into consideration when as part of the responses? Because it would be interesting to see sort of people, for example, living in council housing or private renting and aspiring to own their own home, sort of how they feel about the local plan compared to say people who already own their own home outright.
Thank you, Councillor. We don't have all of that, but we do have some of that data, and we can infer some of that data, but it's not as clearly laid out as you suggest. It's something we could probably look towards in a future consultation, but we don't readily have all of that data available at the moment. But it's definitely something we could look at.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. That's everything I've got for now, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? No? Thank you all. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is skills and employment developer contributions, which is on pages 53 to 59. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is just a report, and I think this was asked for by the Scrutiny Committee to have a look at, obviously, how we're making Section 106 contributions work across Basildon, and particularly this is focused around the skills and employment contributions that we obtain. So we show here how well they're being managed, the clear governance that we have in place, and how we obviously continuously monitor these contributions and how we ensure they're spent for the right purposes and within the required timescales. It's positive to see that most of the skills and employment funding we hold is already allocated to live projects, and the remaining funds are being carefully managed to avoid risk of having returning money to developers. We're having a clear focus to get as much value from these contributions as possible and turning them into real outcomes. And the last Scrutiny Committee, I came along and spoke to you about the expansion of pathways, having dedicated officers to be able to ensure that individuals aren't falling through the cracks, and we're able to support people into work. And that's having, a great impact on ensuring that I think around 15 people have been supported by that one individual into full-time employment since he started in October, which are great numbers to show that we are, supporting individuals on a one-to-one basis. So we're already seeing those developments happening on the ground, and we have also recently launched the Construction Academy. So we do have plans to obviously help expand that with a physical site coming to fruition early this year. So we have got plans to obviously continue to use this Section 106 funding to provide the stable long-term support needed to grow that offer alongside anything that we have within Pathways and the Employment Centre. The report does show a sensible use of these contributions and a clear link between the growth of the borough, the supporting local jobs and the benefits for the residents. So I'm happy for any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Councillor. It's not really a question, but more of a. I noticed that on where is it? On page 55, the table 2 says 2023, 2033, 34, 34, 35, etc. I assume that's meant to be 2023, 24, or is it's meant to be in 10 years time? Okay, fair enough.
That's then they need to be spent by. So it goes to show that we have a length of time to spend it, and obviously, clearly have a clear plan for what we already have. Obviously, we're getting skills and employment contributions in most of our developments coming forward as well. So that will grow and change over time, but that's when the current money we hold has to be spent by.
Fair enough. Yeah, I thought reading it, I thought that was when it was when we got the money, but it's clearly when it needs to be spent. Okay, that's the only thing I had to ask.
I have one. It says much of the fund and support initiatives, such as the Construction Academy and Employment Brokerage. I just wanted to know how are the officers measuring long-term outcomes, such as sustained employment or progression, and rather than just simply activity delivered.
I think that's probably more of an operational question for their managers. But no, working with the teams, we are talking about how we obviously show that real-term growth. So yes, obviously we have the officer now in post that we can actually track the outcomes. Pathways previously existed as a system where a number of other training providers and organisations that work in our borough can come together as that one-stop shop. So it wouldn't be on us to obviously track their outcomes. But we do now have offices in post where we can track the outcomes. We're going to continue to support the individuals. The same with the Basildon Construction Academy. We're obviously working with external partners and our local businesses to grow and build that, and we obviously will want to know the outcomes of the training and so on. But that is, you know, coming to fruition earlier this year. So we will ensure there's clear KPIs and progress in place to ensure we get value for money.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more questions? Okay. And we'll be moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the work programme on pages 61 and 64, 264.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides members with an opportunity to consider items for the committee's work programme on pages 61 to 62. The report is asking that the committee notes and endorses the items currently identified for the work programme as set out in the report and considers any further items that need to be added, and the committee notes the Cabinet Forward Plan and considers any items that fall within its remit that it may wish to consider. So these items are TBC at the moment. We are looking to schedule an additional meeting, and we hope to update members on that as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, Councillor Moore?
Yeah, just a question really about the Regulation 19 local plan submission document. In the local development scheme from late last year, that was supposed to be happening in the first quarter of this year, so that would be February, March. So when is the submission for Regulation 19, and when does this committee see it before it gets issued?
Officer?
Councillor Moore, as I did say that because of the, and we've just been through an awful lot of work about infrastructure, we are reviewing the programme of the local plan to allow all that information to be submitted before we take a plan through to the next Regulation 19. The Planning Advisory Service have set out a checklist now for plans that hit Regulation 19, and it's quite clear what the steps you have to get to before you can reach Regulation 19. So we have to make sure the council's at that point before we get there. So at the moment we are looking at refreshing the local development scheme at the moment to deal with that checklist, to ensure that we can submit to the council a document that we know, because we don't get it back, do we? Once it's been out for Regulation 19, it's gone, isn't it? So we have to make sure that the submission document and documents that go forward meet that that PAS checklist, because the reason we did 3 Reg 18 plans is the fact that the inspectorate don't like you doing double Reg 19 plans now, so you don't get a second chance at Reg 19. You have to have special reasons for doing that. So our position is the fact that we want to get it right first time and meet the PAS checklist. So we haven't got we're still, I mean, it's only been a month out, but we haven't got a revised local development scheme. So it will more like, that's why I said it, I think you'll have to do, it will be the new municipal calendar when that will come forward. So it won't come in with this, in this calendar, municipal calendar, it will be the next one. Is that right?
Is there any more questions, or anyone like to add anything? No? Okay, so I'd say that this meeting has come to an end. Please drive safely. Thank you.